just you and I.
How's it going, guys? Public Safety Network here. Decided I was actually going to do a video topic today, more of like a kind of like advice / training type video. Today we're going to be talking about trespassing. Trespassing is probably the most common crime that security guards deal with. If you don't know what trespassing is, it's pretty much remaining on property after you've been asked to leave by an authorized person from that property. Most security guards have probably had to deal with this at least once or twice during their career. And so we're going to kind of discuss some ways of handling trespassing. And I'm going to use a story to kind of help iterate my point to everybody. So where I'm from, trespassing is usually done in degrees, first, second, and third degree. The most common form of trespass is going to be trespassing in the third degree. What that is, it's remaining on a property after a reasonable request has made that you leave, either by the owner, an agent of the owner, which includes security, or a law enforcement officer. In my state, trespassing in the third degree is a class 3 misdemeanor, which means it is the lowest form of misdemeanor that we have. It's also called the don't give a shit misdemeanors because most law enforcement agencies don't really care about class 3 misdemeanors. Very rarely do they ever even get prosecuted just because they're so low on the totem pole. Now, when dealing with trespassing, we're going to kind of discuss some different ways of handling it. When it comes to dealing with trespassing, they usually have multiple options on ways you can deal with it. And, you know, they're all viable options, but some, which we'll just say, are more viable than others. And I'm going to use kind of a story to kind of make my point about why some options are better than others. This is actually not my story. It's a story from a buddy of mine who we used to work together at the same company before I got my current job. And so this is kind of a story that he actually told me that kind of, I think, will be good to solidify my point. He was telling me about a time where he was working his property. This is his assigned site. He's usually there most of his work week. And he was assigned a new guard. The new guard was basically assigned to him. They were going to do some training, kind of get him up to speed. The site he was at was a little more of an active one. Nothing too crazy, but I mean, you tend to get a little more action there than you would at a lot of other sites. Well, during the course of their shift, they encounter a young male. I think he was a juvenile. He's about 16, whatever. They talk to him, find out that he really has no business here, and they trespass on the property, saying, hey, you come back here, you can be subject to arrest. He leaves, and then a few hours later, I think he comes back, and they stop and they talk to him, and they're like, hey man, you've been told before that you're not allowed to be here. You need to leave. Well, the new security guard breaks one of the cardinal rules of this type of work is you have to remain professional, calm, cool, and collected. We're kind of trusted that we will keep a level head and that we're not gonna lose our cool on people. And I mean, that's what he did. He ended up getting into a big screaming match, yelling and screaming at each other. And finally, the 16-year-old male decides that I'm done. I'm gonna leave. And so as he's walking away, the security guard loses it and ends up tackling him and arresting him and placing him in handcuffs. Well, here's what I'm going to talk about this. This whole video isn't to dissect the way the guard handled it, but I am going to make a couple of points about the way he handled the situation. When you're looking at handling a situation like this, there's a few things you need to consider. Obviously, one is what is his level of compliance. Here, although he was being mouthy and yelling and screaming at him as he was walking away, he was still walking away. And in this line of work, what's the main job of security? It's to detect and deter crime and to maintain the safety and security of our client's assets, properties, their clientele. That's our job. And by him leaving, whether he's verbal about it or not, that we have effectively done our job. Another thing to look at too, especially when you're using that level of force, that's a high level of physical force, tackling someone and placing them in handcuffs. is the type of crime they're committing. I mean, this is a class 3 misdemeanor. It's the lowest misdemeanor we have in my state, and so using that level of force on that minor of a crime with no other aggravating factors, I mean, that's just wildly inappropriate, and that's going to cause some issues. And then thirdly is the fact that he's a juvenile. Obviously juveniles are capable of some pretty horrific things, as anytime you watch the news, you can see that. But when you're handling a juvenile in this case, especially in the case of a simple trespass, I mean, this, the law looks at juveniles a little differently than they do adults, and how you can handle them. And so this guard made an abundance of mistakes, and I'm going to kind of get off topic here for a second, and I'm going to kind of give a little words of wisdom to the younger guys out there. In almost all states, security guards have no more arrest authority than your average citizen can. They're offered no special protections. I know there are a few states out there that maybe offer a little more level of authority when it comes to making arrests than an average citizen, but in most states this is not the case. So if you are going to deprive someone of their rights, that's effectively what you're doing when you're arresting someone, whether that's placing them in handcuffs, whether that's simply tackling them to the ground and holding them there, or even just restricting their movements in some way. You are depriving this person of their right to freedom of movement. And if you're going to do that, you need to make damn sure that you have crossed your T's and dotted your I's, because crossing that line, you're looking at, this guard himself is looking at possible civil suit for a variety of, including assault, wrongful imprisonment, and the same with criminal charges. He's looking at assault, wrongful imprisonment. If he moved him against his will, he's looking at possible kidnapping charges. I mean, it's no joke, guys, when you decide as a security guard that you're going to put your hands on somebody. Because doing it wrongfully, like I said, it's going to get you jammed up legally, both criminally and civilly. And so you really need to think about that before you decide you're going to, arrest someone especially for something this petty of an offense. We're not protected like police officers have. In most states, police officers have what's known as qualified immunity when they're performing their police duties in good faith. I'm not going to really go into that, but if you're interested, you can go and Google the term online, and there's a bunch of case law about it. But that's kind of where I want to get off on that side point. A little piece of advice: if you're going to, go hands-on with someone, especially in effecting an arrest, you need to make sure that you have everything you need in order to make a lawful arrest, because you're not protected like the police are. But what I'm going to kind of go off of now is we're going to kind of talk about other ways that trespassing can be handled. And now, in my state, trespassing is a crime. It's a misdemeanor. It is an arrestable offense by security. You can technically make an arrest for the crime of trespassing in the third degree. However, this is one of those situations that, just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean that you should. And what I mean by that is when you're using force on someone, the object of the use of force, especially when using the force continuum, is you want to be able to resolve your issue using the least amount of force as possible. So if you can solve your issue with the lowest, rung of force, which is usually officer presence, then that should be your goal here. Going straight to arresting someone for, criminal trespass, again, you can do it, but our goal in security is to effectively solve problems. We're there to, first of all, prevent problems from happening, but also when problems do arise, we're there to try to solve it. And jumping straight to, I'm going to tackle this guy and make an arrest, in this case, I believe it was pretty unlawful, but even if it was a lawful arrest, you kind of jump straight to that without exploring other possible options to resolve this issue. And what I'm going to tell you guys, it's no big secret when you're dealing with the public, especially even, people like this, suspects in crimes or even, petty offenses, is if you treat them with dignity and respect and you talk to them like they're a person, maybe even if they're not treating you in the most respectful manner, you're going to get better results. People don't like to be talked down to. They don't like to be treated like they're stupid. Talk to them as if you would talk to anybody else. And the biggest thing I can tell you when it comes to trespassing is the majority of the trespassers I've dealt with, if you simply ask them, hey, you're not allowed to be here. Sir, you've been told before that you're not allowed to be on this property. You need to leave. And when you tell somebody that, you're usually going to elicit one of three responses. The first is going to be, okay, I understand, and they leave. And at that point, you can just kind of wipe your hands of it, and you're all done. The next response you could possibly elicit is the one that this guy gave. He was a little bit verbally abrasive about it. He was saying, pretty much saying, F this is BS, blah, blah, blah. But he was still complying with what you wanted him to do. He was leaving the premises. And so, again, that's the intended results. Even, it may not necessarily be the way you wanted it to go, but, that's how it ended. But it resolved itself. And then you get to the last part, which would be the F you, you're a security guard, you can't do anything to me type person. And, these people do exist. They happen. Now, this is where, again, the continuum comes into play. You have someone, you've asked them using verbal commands to say, hey, you need to leave, and he said, screw you, I'm not leaving. I'm like, all right. Well, at this point, you can start to kind of assess what your next option could be. And then, like I said, there's a few other options you can go with in this situation. You could, if you feel comfortable with it and capable of doing it, you could physically escort them off. I've done that before. Another one, like I said, you could arrest them for criminal trespassing, but again, we've talked about how it's probably best to explore other options, because once you decide to arrest someone, you're going to have to place them in cuffs, turn them over to the local police department. The local police department's going to come down and they're going to decide whether or not they're actually going to want to book him into jail, or if they're simply going to cite and release. And what I can tell you is, in the case of a Class 3 misdemeanor, the answer is most likely going to be a cite and release. Most police officers aren't going to take someone down and book them into jail for a Class 3 misdemeanor with no other aggravating circumstances. But another one you'll get is you call the police department. As much as we don't want to have to rely on the police department to take care of our problems, sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes you've given it your best on this one, but and they're saying, screw you, you're just a security guard. Well, he's like, well, now I'm going to call the police, and a lot of times that's enough to get people's attention. I'm like, I was okay messing with the security guard, but I really don't want to mess with the police on this one. And then majority of times that's enough to get them to kind of leave and pack up and stop whatever they're doing. Like I said, guys, this is just my take from my own personal experience. It's my way of doing things. It's not necessarily the only way of doing things, but I try to look at these types of situations from a logical perspective, and in what's going to be not only the easiest on me, what's going to be easiest on the client, the company, the people around them, and in last case, easiest on dealing with the suspect. I'm not, no, if you're getting into security to make a lot of arrests and send a lot of people to jail, then you need to find another line of work. Police officers, that's not even their main job, is arresting people and sending them to jail. So if you're looking to do that, especially for these little petty offenses, I would highly suggest you go find a different career field, because you're just going to end up making yourself look bad, and in this guy's case, you're going to end up getting yourself into some legal trouble. So that's really all I have on this topic today, guys. It was just kind of something that came to mind I thought was kind of important because of how common it is. I also want to thank everyone who's been watching the videos, who's been subscribing, who's been liking. This channel actually has grown pretty exponentially in the last 30 to 90 days. And, it's going to continue to grow, hopefully. The more you guys watch, like, subscribe, all that, the more content I can put out, and hopefully, I can start putting out better quality content for you guys. Certainly you're probably getting tired of watching me ride around in the car and just talking into the camera. Alright, guys, like I said, but for all my night shifters out there, have a safe shift. I'll be trying to do the same. And if you're a day shifter, we'll try to clean up all the actual stuff before you guys come in to work your shifts. Alright, guys, well, thanks for watching, and have yourselves a good night.